Welcome to 56-Bit Cloud Cafe, your go-to destination for all tech topics in the cloud. I'm Athir Zalat.
And I'm Patrick Camilleri. And together we'll be addressing various cloud topics.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the final episode of our Amazon EKS series. Today, we are exploring advanced topics and future trends in Amazon EKS, from hybrid deployments to cutting-edge innovations. Join us as we peek into the future of cloud-native computing with Amazon EKS. So let's start. It is built to handle almost anything you throw at it, and that shows in the increase of customers going for it. What are some advanced features and capabilities of Amazon EKS for handling complex workloads?
Most applications, workloads that are running in Kubernetes, and the managed version of that in AWS is EKS, obviously. Most of those are simple enough that you do not require any specific new technologies to be used. Let me start off by saying that because it's very important to not over-engineer certain solutions. Having said that, as you grow, or maybe your organization is already mature and big enough to require certain services for more complex workloads. And that's what the question is about, basically. What features and capabilities can we leverage outside or inside EKS to run more complex requirements and workloads? So I would like to mention some from Amazon, but obviously there is also a lot of third parties who help with Kubernetes workloads. In Amazon's case, there is, for example, Amazon EKS Anywhere. So basically, inside EKS, they are running a version of Kubernetes, which is very similar to the open source version, but it's a separate fork, a separate version that Amazon has open source as well. So this is open source, but slightly different from what we usually use. And it has best practices inside that Amazon believes should be there. It has a lot of good defaults to start with. So this distro, this version of Kubernetes, you can download it, you can use it, it's free, and you can use it on your on-premise hybrid deployments as well. So you have the same exact version running on AWS as well as in your on-premise environment if you have a hybrid deployment. Another advanced feature, which I suggest you actually use from the start, unless you have specific reasons not to, would be Fargate. Fargate allows your worker nodes, those nodes which run the pods, the software, to run in a serverless fashion, meaning you literally don't have any responsibility whatsoever, and also no control, which might be fine for you, to run those worker nodes. Those worker nodes which run the pods, they are run in a completely serverless compute fashion. It can be cost effective. There are scenarios where it will not be as cost effective as EC2, but I would suggest you actually use this from the start, even if it's not a complex workload. Then there is the AWS distro for OpenTelemetry. So basically, again, OpenTelemetry is an open source project, a very popular one, which allows you to do tracing, where you have a high-level view of your microservices, how they are interacting with each other, and then you can start digging deeper into the logs when you find issues and patterns there. But this tracing mechanism, using the open source OpenTelemetry approach, AWS have forked this as well. They have their own open source version of this, which is known as the AWS distro for OpenTelemetry. And you can use this with the best practices that AWS has implemented in this distro. You can use it on-premise or inside your cluster. As a reminder, there is also X-Ray, which is a managed service that also does tracing in AWS. It's separate from OpenTelemetry, but you can use both in conjunction, or you can consolidate on one of them. Something else which comes to mind would be Bottle Rocket OS. So this is Amazon's version of an operating system that runs your pods, right? So your worker nodes will need an operating system on them, like Linux, and there are many versions of Linux that you can use, etc. And on top of that OS, there will be the pods running, which Kubernetes is ultimately handling. So AWS went further than that, created its own operating system, which has a lot of security features, best practices. It's very minimal, so it doesn't take a lot of resources. And they actually use it internally, but they have also open sourced this, and you can freely use it on your on-premise environment or inside your worker nodes on EC2. You can use this to host your worker nodes and to host the pods on top. So those are some more advanced projects, features that you can use, and definitely if you start getting to that area of expertise, it would make sense to look at those.
One of the factors making the choice easier with any cloud service is supporting a hybrid setup. How does Amazon EKS support hybrid and multi-cloud deployments?
Right, so cloud deployments on their own are very popular, but something very popular today as well is hybrids, which means having your applications running on-premise and as well as in the cloud and joined together through some networking features, which we'll discuss. Another option would be multi-cloud, where you're using multiple cloud providers like Azure and AWS, using them together to have more reliability and ultimately have no dependence on a specific vendor. This is a lot more complex than having a single cloud, but ultimately Kubernetes, because it's an open source version, it's open source, you can actually use it across these two environments without issues. Something to help you with this would be AWS EKS Anywhere, which we've already discussed. It's basically the open source version of Kubernetes that AWS runs on EKS. And you can use this on-premise and in other clouds as well. Then there is AWS Outposts, which is a separate service that allows you to have some of the services that you use inside AWS brought to you on-premise. So this bridges the gap between the AWS cloud and your on-premise environment. Inside your on-premise environment, you would get physical servers from AWS that AWS handles. This is what is known as Outposts. And inside those servers, you have the same APIs, the same technologies that would run on the cloud, EKS included. And finally, there are the many networking features that you can use to join hybrid and multi-cloud environments together. I'm just going to mention some here, like VPCs and VPNs and Cloud WAN, Global Accelerator, and ELBs. There are many things that, from a networking perspective, allow you to join your on-premise, other clouds as well as other clouds to AWS cloud.
As we all know, AWS never stops building and improving on all levels. Can you discuss any recent updates or upcoming features in Amazon EKS?
Yes, so EKS, just like any other AWS service, is constantly updating with new features, most of them small features, but then you would have larger features and either new ones or updated versions of those features. What I would suggest is to keep an eye out on the official AWS website and blogs for these announcements, because they come out every single day. So if you go to aws.amazon.com/new, NEW, you will get a list of all the updates on all the services of AWS. These are literally coming out lots of them on a day-by-day basis, and you can also filter and drill down into the EKS stuff. Things which are changed on a day-to-day basis. You're looking for support for Fargates, security enhancements, integration between EKS and Kubernetes with other AWS services or with other third-party tools. There are many things to look out for, but keeping yourself updated is obviously very important.
And as always, external factors frequently play a role in the maturity and expansion of a tech stack. What are some emerging trends or technologies in the Kubernetes and container orchestration space that might impact Amazon EKS in the future?
Right, so emerging trends, I would say some trends are not emerging. They have been there for 5-10 years, but doesn't mean that they are widely used or they are used enough. We've seen a lot of companies who have, you can say, an immature ability to do certain best practices, although this is obviously improving, and we help our customers as much as possible improve on that. Things like serverless containers, where you're using serverless functions like Lambda or maybe functions from other cloud providers alongside your containers, because with microservices you don't have to use the same technologies. Every microservice can have its own technology. One can use Kubernetes, the other can use Lambda, depending what's most efficient for that specific microservice. Things like service meshes, which are a network layer communication tool that allows you to have very easy, quick, and secure communication between services. So some pods can speak to other pods, whilst others cannot do that. You have load balancing in there. You have discovery in there. So service meshes are used a lot with Kubernetes, and there are many tools, many versions of those tools that you can use as a service mesh. So definitely something to look forward to having more of. Finally, something which has been a best practice for 15 plus years, but ultimately we don't see it all the time, and we try to help our customers as much as possible move towards it, which is GitOps, right? So GitOps, operations using Git or JIT, is when you have workflows which use code to deploy your applications. So here we're talking about infrastructure code, application code, and then using Git or JIT push towards something like GitLab or GitHub, and that will start the CI/CD pipeline, an automated pipeline that grabs that code, that infrastructure and application code, and pushes it, implements it on the environment, whether it's a on-premise or cloud environment. So that whole workflow greatly increases the speed and agility that you can use, as well as reliability and the ability to do security checks of that code as well during the workflow. And it's also a very important section of DevOps, right? So DevOps is a bunch of concepts that are placed together, giving you best practices in terms of application development and deployment. GitOps is a good, important part of that.
And now, for customers who are already on EKS, they have certainly reached an impeccable level of stability with their service. But with continuous updates and evolution, how can organizations best prepare for the evolution of Amazon EKS and stay ahead in their cloud-native journey?
Here, the suggestions I'm going to give are a bit maybe obvious, but you don't see them all the time, even though they are obvious. And that would be things like, stay updated, right? So sign up to newsletters, sign up to AWS announcements, sign up to blogs, attend webinars, attend conferences. The more you upskill, the more you stay updated, because it's such a fast-changing environment. Well, ultimately, the more you will understand the concepts behind this and be ahead of the curve. It's also important to experiment. So experimentation is key here. New features coming out on a day-by-day basis. It's a matter of putting in the time to experiment in separate AWS accounts, development environments, without touching production, obviously, But ultimately, you might find certain features that are interesting to launch into production as well. And just like you can stay updated in an informal manner, you can also remain updated and upskill yourself and your team's skills through certifications, through learning courses around best practices. This is something we do internally as part of the culture of 56-bit. It's what keeps us ultimately ahead of the curve to ensure that we can help our customers be as efficient and as cloud native and best practice as we can.
And that's a wrap on our Amazon EKS series. We hope you enjoyed exploring the advanced topics and future trends shaping the world for cloud native computing. Keep an eye out for our next series, where we will continue to uncover the latest innovations in the cloud. Until then, happy cloud computing!
If you have questions, suggestions, or want to share your feedback, connect with us on social media.
Also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and to leave us a review to help others find their way to the Cloud Cafe.